Hello, everybody. We are back. My name is Paul Minier. I'm the Director of Education here at the Federation of Calgary Communities, and we are hosting a two-part series today on organizational culture. If you haven't yet seen the video for part one with Hillhurst Sunnyside Community Association and Habitus Collective talking about their approach to this organizational cultural conversation, please check out that video. But now we are going to open up part two of this discussion, and it is my pleasure to welcome Jenny Mae Smith, who's the president of the Braeside Community Association, to talk about some of the incredible work that they have been doing in their neighborhood. Jenny, I have said she's a co-host, so I think you can screen share and take over from here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Paul. I will share my screen. I'm on. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to put this on. Can everyone see the screen?
Indeed.
Great. Uh, oh, just a second. What's going on here? One moment. It's paused. I don't know why. I'm going to try this again. It just paused for no reason. Give me a moment. Should have tested this before. Okay. Good. You can see me?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. I don't know if it's my connection, but I'm just gonna go ahead. Um, I can't, hopefully you guys can hear me. Okay, that's the most important is that you can hear me for now. So yeah, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation from the FCC and from you, Paul, and the introduction. And I am delighted to be sharing a bit about what's been happening at the Braeside Community Association over the past few years. So I'm going to start with, and as Paul mentioned, I'm the president. I'm currently in fourth term as president of the Braeside Community Association, and I've been living in the community of Braeside for 12 years and on the board for just over 4 years. So a little bit about Braeside. Not everybody knows about Braeside. I didn't know about Braeside until I actually moved here. So we are in the southwest quadrant of Calgary, just south of the Glenmore Reservoir and north of Fish Creek Park. And as I was reflecting when I was putting these slides together and sort of remembering the history for myself, and it's like this is a community that having lived here now, when I meet someone and I say I live in Braeside, either they're like, oh, they don't know where it is, or they're like, oh yeah, I grew up in Cedar Brae, or yeah, I grew up in Oak Ridge, or grew up in Braeside. So there's a really good, like the sense of people's like place here in Braeside, and the stories that they have that they bring to it are really beautiful. And that's been one of the things I've really loved about Braeside. So became a community in 1965, and we are currently welcoming a resurgence of younger families. So the families that moved here back in 1967. My house is 1967. I'm sitting in my house. I'm looking outside in Braeside right now. There were a lot of young families that moved here. And so that was really what led to the creation of the Community Association, which came to life in 1967. So just a couple of years, well, really when the houses were first being built. I think people were excited to start to gather, and our outdoor rink and skate shack were two of the things that happened first in this community. And actually our skate shack is still here. It was transformed into what is our before and after school care. But the actual building itself, it was like, what kind of a building do we need? We need a place where people can change their skates and go to the bathroom. Like that was the priority in Braeside back in the late 60s and early 70s as these things were being built. And then it eventually transformed into a full community center. So with basketball courts, green spaces where people were engaging in sports, the before and after school care that I mentioned, and then lots of events that happened year after year after year. So move on to jumping to 2024, which was a couple of years ago. It was really important to me. I mentioned my history. I've been in this role as president since our January AGM in 2023. But prior to me, I just want to like honor and acknowledge all the past community association boards and staff members, including Paul, actually used to work for the Braeside Community Association, who came before because we were in a position to, when I started, it was kind of in the midst of the lockdowns and COVID and things were pretty quiet in Braeside. And so we really sort of we there was a desire, even a personal desire, but like to come alive again. And because people were starting to peek out their doors and get involved and get more engaged, there was a really strong opportunity I felt, and I was again using my own self as a reference point. A single mom living here with my boy was I need to be more closely connected to the community. I want to know my neighbors. I want to like what's actually happening, I had no relationship with the community association building. It was sitting there and I knew it existed and there was this sign that said things were happening. But I wasn't I had no relationship with it and I wasn't engaged. And I felt that I really, really wanted to get engaged. So I did. And then ultimately very quickly became the president. And then throughout basically 2023 was just understanding where we came from, what was needed. There was a lot that happened that year, and that's not about what this presentation is, but it was like there was some foundational stuff that happened before we could really start to say, okay, so how do we really get to know who's in this community, what they need, and how we can really meet the needs of the residents of Braeside and neighboring communities? Because as I mentioned before, we have a close tie with our neighboring communities like Cedar Brae, like Woodbine. We've got Palliser to the north. We've got Southwood to the east. I'm really being tested here, as well as Canyon Meadows. So we're surrounded by a number of other communities. And we knew that our building, so there was the skate shack, and about 10 years later, another two-story building was built. And actually, many residents in this community built it, helped to build it, cinder block building, and it was really starting to show signs of having some challenges. And so we had some assessments done from the city and understood that the building itself was going to be needing some significant repairs. And we wondered if it was really meeting the needs of Braeside. It had a lot of rentals happening, people from outside, in some cases in the community, but in most cases not. There's a church that runs in our association. Then we also have, that's been there for about 35 years, as well as the Chinook Musical Society operates out of there. So there were some long-term renters, which were great. We were bringing in income from that. But the question was, are we really meeting the needs of Braeside? And ideally the neighbor communities as well. So we launched a survey. We got an ING grant, which is the Inspire Neighborhoods grant, and we hired Stone Olafson to do this for us. And we want to explore what's important to people in Braeside. What would meet their needs? And then other things like, getting involved and volunteering and those sorts of things. This was if any of you watching this have ever engaged in the survey process, this was probably one of the most labor intensive like times of my tenure as community association president, because I was so excited. And we were going to get like the largest number of respondents that anybody's ever had across the entire city, and we got the average. And we worked really hard. It does not negate the actual like data that we got, because it's very important to us and we still continue to anchor to it. But it was about 5% of the population. And we had, I think I have it on, oh, I don't have it on the next one. Maybe it is there. Anyways, we had signs up everywhere. We were communicating in as many ways as we possibly could. And ultimately, we had a report that was written by Stone Olufsen for us. So it was called the Community Needs Research. And what did we hear? We heard that the residents feel Braeside is safe and friendly. They love the green spaces, and the green spaces are worth protecting. Our community is worth protecting. Um, we were interestingly, there was a small proportion of our members that actually filled out the survey, which was actually really interesting. I don't actually have that stat here, but the majority of people, there's a number of people who were newer to the community and were not actually current members. So they cited lack of awareness, like, I don't really know what's going on. I don't know what's going on at the Braeside Community Center. And ultimately, we, like all community associations, have the great news media that goes door to door, but there's always limitations with that in terms of what we could communicate and whether or not people were reading it. We saw that 90% of the community supported some changes to the building itself as a community center. The newer residents, and there were a number of them, gave some feedback on the kind of programming that they felt like they wanted. And then there was more in terms of people who've been here for longer, they really wanted to protect the community. So we noticed there was a pretty significant difference between, there was some shared kind of loves in the community and things that were important to them, like the parks and green spaces. And I'll certainly talk more about that as we go forward. But there was the sense of like protecting the history and protecting what's here. There's a lot more to that, a lot of data that was in there. But based on what we learned from the survey, what did we do? Because we knew that we had to do something. I mean, there's honestly, well, there's things that are worse than that, but it's really, when you go and ask people for information and they don't do anything about it, it really erodes trust in the community. So we knew we wanted to take some action. And even though I was exhausted after trying to um, get as many people as possible to complete the survey, we knew that there was some really good information in there for us that would help guide us as we moved forward. So the parks, gardens, and green spaces, this was our anchor. And actually, I'll share this a little bit later on, but we developed four pillars that were like sort of our strategic pillars, I guess, of like where we were going to focus based on the things that we knew were important to people in the survey. But the parks and the green spaces, we were like front and center for everyone. So we knew that we were going to be advancing our eco sanctuary initiatives. So one of our directors came forward before the survey with some plans for the garden space behind our community center. And so this has just continued to expand. This was easy because we already had someone in place, so it was great. We launched a new resident welcome program. So we have little bags that we put information about the BCA. We created these Braeside You Belong pins. We put a pin in there. We had, so the first ones we did, I cut down some thyme from my backyard and I tied it up and I put it in the bag. It's a little bit different every time. We're connecting with local businesses as well, but that's been a really interesting and engaging and fun way to go door and like see the excitement actually and of people when they move to the community and connect with them that way. And then of course, as it relates to the building, we began exploring opportunities to improve the existing facilities. What could it look like? Because there were some learnings, but we knew also that we didn't really have enough information to know more deeply, like, okay, so residents are saying they think they want this based on what they know, and perhaps they haven't been engaging with the community association a lot. But also, like, how do we fit in with this quadrant of the city as a community and what we're offering? Um, Oops, I went backwards instead of what happened there. I'm going backwards. So what else did we do? There's more. So we continued with events that brought residents together. Sometimes we've gone completely overboard with the amount of events that we've been offering. Now we sort of have like a few that we're offering as events that are happening every year. Our Stampede event, we do a back to school bash in September. So things that people know are happening on a yearly basis. They tend to be well attended. We have, as I said, relationships too with local businesses and stuff. So we want to keep doing those things because people love that. And then also encouraged activation of green spaces that had undergone changes. So we had a couple playgrounds removed, and so those areas were reimagined. And so we didn't just want to just kind of leave them, great. We have a tetherball and we have is looking at ways to encourage the community to use it. We actually also included a Braeside borrow box in one of our, it's actually the one that's just down the road from me. And we put some badminton rackets in there and some soccer balls and a few other things that people could just come and play with. And interestingly, if anybody, curiosity, that a lot of people were like, oh, like just worried they're going to get wrecked or stolen, or there was all this fear about it. And same with, we also had a fire pit, and I think everyone, or there were a number of people who were afraid that the tree next to it was going to start on fire and that people weren't going to take care of it. I mean, this is our second summer with it, that we're heading into, and we still have pretty much everything in the borrow box. Some things have been damaged ever so slightly, but everything has been, returned back. I do tend to walk through and just, organize things a little bit. But it's been pretty well stewarded. Actually, just recently I found there was a chair, like a living room chair, like a comfy chair that was sitting next to the pit. And I wondered, okay, somebody might have found that in a back alley. And I wonder, and I didn't do anything, but within 4 hours it was gone. So we're seeing that the community is also taking care and stewarding the space as well. We also connected with residents who are feeling the impacts of rezoning. We had one development here in Braeside, just one, but we did engage with that because that was also something that was really important. This survey went out right when rezoning was a really, really hot topic, and so that was actually the number one issue at 24%. I'm going to say only 24%, but it was also the number one. So we were engaging quite heavily in that, and then we also decided to launch an e-newsletter. So rather than just the door to door for members, and it's not just members only anymore, but we have a monthly newsletter that goes out that is ours and we own it. This keeps going backwards. So the next step for us was, okay, so we have all this information. 90% of people want to see some changes at the community association building. How do we learn more? And how do we really, again, engage the community in understanding deeper of what their needs are, and then also showing again that we're taking this and we're moving forward with it. So two things happened. It started with another inspiring neighborhood grant from the city of Calgary. Thanks so much, City of Calgary. We're blessed to have had your funding support us because it's really has helped. It's amazing how pricey these are. I mean, it makes sense because the amount of work that goes into them. This one we hired Hargroup to do, and I know feasibility study isn't like most exciting title, but it was really like figuring out what's feasible in our community, and then also feasible, realistic, but we were also really dreaming. There's a lot of dreaming that went into this. Like in the dream world, what would you want? What would you want to see? What would the building look like? What would you be doing in there? And so we were asking questions like the community, what you want, what amenities would meet their needs, and then if actually had a building again, what would it look like? So I love how this goes backwards. So the study started in, I think it was May of 2025. So it was just over a year ago. And the final one was just published in May 2026, but it more or less came to closure at the beginning of this year. And yeah, there was focus groups. We did surveys. There were one-on-one interviews with all staff and board members and other like sort of engaged members of the community. There was a lot of research and analysis of what was going on in neighboring communities as well. So it's like Braeside was going to have a new facility or new amenities. We don't want to be just duplicating what's happening in Southwood, or we don't want to, we want to feel like how we can be synergistic towards. And also, we've got the South End Leisure Center nearby. So also looking at recreational facilities and outdoor spaces, et cetera. So yeah, this is a pretty extensive, like the final report has a lot of information in it. And it was born of a lot of conversations and a lot of connection in the community. We also, and this was the cool part that we got to integrate, was it's SAPL, which I always forget. applied learning. It's the Masters of Architecture students in their second year. So each student in their second year, a semester has a project where they work with creating. They work with. There's a number of community associations they work with, other nonprofit organizations who are looking to have some design work done for their facilities. So we were able to tie the two together. So we were gathering a lot of information through the feasibility study. And then, I mean, we met with Philip Vandermeer, who was he was the professor these are the four students who worked on the project for us. And he came months before we made any decisions to come and look at the building, and we were sort of sharing what our thoughts and dreams and visions were and what could be possible. And so we were able to, as I said, link these two together. So they connect that feasibility study and they use their incredible minds and their design skills as second year students to create some options for us. So you'll see here on here, we have one option. This one was actually called Hillside. This is kind of, this was my favorite. Um, it's basically Bray means hill, even though there's not that many hills around here, but there are some lumps and bumps around Braeside. But this one had that in mind, like use that as an inspiration. And so it has like a green space actually on top of the building, and you can actually walk across it and enjoy some garden space up there. So this was very much inspired dream making, aspirational. What could be possible? What could this look like? And we presented both the results of what we heard from the feasibility study as well as the designs. And there were two renovations to our existing building, and then there were three new designs. So at our AGM in January, we invited the community to come and have a look there was these really cool models that they had. You could take the roof off, and then we had these displays that had lots of detail about all of them. And it was a really engaging evening. And so we were never sure if any of this was ever going to happen. And we still don't know exactly where the future lies with all of this. But what I can say for certain is that it got people dreaming too in the community and looking and kind of feeling what was possible. And that was actually it was really cool at the AGM, watching people walk through and the conversations that I had with people about, is this really like how much would this cost? Is this really possible? And in a time, honestly, where things are really heavy in the world, this also provided an opportunity to just like anchor into your own community and dream into what might be possible, connect, connect with the community, sort of offers relief to some things that feel uncontrollable. And actually, honestly, all of this, there was a part of this, a significant part of this, I would say, that was like, what can we do? What is possible in my community right here that I can see, feel, touch, smell, connect, and possibly wherever possible to make a difference when the rest of the world feels like it's impossible to do anything about. We also created some, this was a bit of an add-on, honestly, but we were like, we really want to nail our vision and values. And we've been working on it for about 18 months because we did it ourselves in late 2024. And then we did it with the city of Calgary in mid 2025. And then the work that we've been doing, it really allowed us to get super clear. And it felt really good because we weren't quite there before. So our current vision statement is, actually, this is our mission statement, actually, not a vision statement. Braeside is vibrant and inclusive, where community grows and thrives in ways that enrich people, place, and well-being. And when I say that, I feel our green spaces. I feel the people who walk around in the community with their dogs. We've got a really like well-loved dog park that people come from all over to visit. It's connected to the Southwood Dog Park, which I love. You just go across an overpass and you're in Southwood. And so it has that like energy And so these were the values, and energies was kind of weird when I first heard it. And it's actually one of my favorites because it really is about things are moving, things are happening here. We are cultivating this. And obviously, with our parks and our green space and our garden and our eco sanctuary, this one is like, particularly vibrant, I think, because it's using that as a reference point. So empowerment, enabling the participation of others in the community, and that really speaks to, if you look at those four pillars, the advocacy and representation. So we as a board, we're not here to take all of the concerns and issues that they personally have to the city around any sort of, but we want to provide an enabling environment and advocate where necessary with the city because we do have that direct relationship with our city representatives, so our counselors. So there's collaboration. We do this together, and inclusion and integrity. So to conclude, um, what's happening now and what's happening next? This was all really exciting. The build up to January was like insane. And that was our AGM. So I was voted back in. We have a very small, I call it small and mighty, board of five at the moment. And we are looking to expand that. But there's been movement, energy towards the green space activation. So Jim Jenkins, who is our director of our parks, gardens, and green spaces, is working to the expansion further into his. It's not just his dream. It's like the community. This is the one of the areas that not only we're using as an anchor, but that committee has grown from like 3 or 4 people to like 15. And there's a whole like way of seeing engagement and activation in a community setting through what's organically, pun intended, happening with the garden committee. So there's more expansion, green space activation. We're looking for opportunities to further activate our green spaces. And this also speaks to the protection of our green spaces. Um, I don't have any knowledge that this is going to happen, but none of us want them being sold off for something to be built on them. So we're looking at protecting and most importantly utilizing those spaces and getting people out and connecting in community. There's lots of ideas around that. We've got an outreach committee now, so we're doing expanded outreach activities to try and get more closely to those who are not as engaged. Tends to be the same people that are engaged, coming forward, volunteering, participating in events. So we're trying to get more out to people who need support, who need more support, but may not be engaging with the community association, so that we can strengthen social bonds in the community. And then we're going to keep doing those events and more fundraising to support more community engagement. And I will share one last slide. Let me just, yeah, so Jim, a couple weeks ago, it was Calgary Climate Week. And because Jim, he's got his own work around sustainability, et cetera, that he's doing personally in his life. But we decided to offer a community event for Calgary Climate Week. So what we did was had a whole afternoon where we did a presentation. We actually had a panel with Philip Vandermeer. He was the architect that worked with those students. And we had Pooja from the FCC talking about the climate action. No, I'm getting this wrong. It's not coming to my um, uh,
Climate Ready YYC.
Thank you. Climate Ready YYC. Appreciate that, Paul. Sometimes you need a little help, and we're not meant to do this alone. And what we did was really weaving together the where we're seeing ourselves going based on what is already happening in terms of the activation, greater engagement where people live. How are we activating our parks that are outside of the hub of our community association? And we do have some stuff happening there as well because our basketball court is in much need of being completely revitalized, we're on course for that. But really looking at how we're also tying that into a sustainable community, future-oriented community that cares about its green spaces, that cares about its buildings, that cares about how, where we're headed. So when we look back to 1967, we know that how things were designed did not have today in mind. So we're looking at ways of integrating how can we be more adaptable for the future with all of the things that we do. So there's a whole presentation. We actually have a video. It will be available. But these were some of the things we started to anchor as well to some of the priorities that people have in the community that may not have come through with as much detail in our survey, but we know to be issues that are more broadly concerns of the city. Um, so yeah, that's it. I welcome any questions that anybody has. There's a lot in there. We actually do have, I'm just going to go to the next slide because our website does have a whole section that includes our Forward Together initiatives. It has, details on what happened at the AGM, the designs from the students and the survey, and all those sorts of things are actually available on our website. I really only just skimmed the surface, but I very much just wanted to give a sense of how we were building towards the future and capitalizing, I guess, or like going with the flow and the energy of a community that was coming back to life after COVID.
Thank you so much, Jenny Mae Smith. On behalf of Braeside Community Association, it was an absolute pleasure to hear this story. It was a pleasure to hear the story from Hillhurst Sunnyside and Habitus in the part one of the series today. Um, I don't mean to speak for you whatsoever. I have an observation that really hits me in the heart here. And that's, I've been teaching governance. I've been with the Federation of Calgary Communities since 2010, and I've been teaching governance for a long time. And I feel like when we're in the space of nonprofit language, strategic plan is just a two-word term. Volunteers, more membership, survey, eh, new building, um, engagement. Like all of these ideas can be very flattened concepts if we don't approach them in a kind of well-rounded way and think about how we build upon that sort of I'm going to use the word energy because when you were talking about all of those things and the fact that energy feels a little bit maybe abstract, but it's your favorite. Um, what I heard is an energy that's been building based on people finding the natural rhythm and the flow of what people care about, and then working as a team to make that all happen and grow out, as opposed to do a strategic plan. It's like, okay, whatever. But your piece is so much more about, building organizational culture and then beyond the footprint and getting residents excited. Uh, and that's just something I heard is it's the value of that energy.
Yeah, yeah, and it's where it comes from, right? It's like, I know for me where my desire to get engaged came from. It came from my heart, came from my soul, and you can feel it in community if that's the case.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today, everybody. Thank you, Jenny Mae Smith from Braeside. Thank you to Habitus and Hillhurst Sunnyside Community Association. For folks who've just watched this video, please check out our part one of this series around building organizational culture. On behalf of the Federation of Calgary Communities, thanks to all of our viewers who are watching these videos and for your time today for the community folks who brought your stories forward. We believe that our peers in the network, the thing they love the most is learning from each other. Peer learning is one of the strongest aspects of communities that come together across, across the city, across the pond, across the way, and learning from each other is you can't put a price tag on it. It's incredibly valuable. So thank you to everybody here today. I'm going to conclude this recording, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.